praise will sing forever. Our great God, our great God. Whoa, no strength, no power greater, no equal to our Savior. You're the name above all others. Our great God, our great God. Whoa, you're the name above all others. Our great God, our great God. Whoa. The Lord bless you and keep you, make His face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn His face toward you and give you peace. The Lord bless you and keep you, make His face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn His face toward you and give you peace. Amen. Amen.
His favor be upon you and 1,000 generations, and your family, and your children, and their children, and their children. May His favor be upon you and 1,000 generations, and your family, and your children, and their children, and their children. May His favor be upon you and 1,000 generations, and your family, and your children, and the children, and the children. May His favor be
let me start off by greeting every single one of you a good Sunday morning. Thank you for joining our online experience here at Quest. Our mission here is to lead people into a growing relationship with Jesus Christ. It's a mission that we feel so privileged to be doing, and it's a mission that we want to invite you to take part in. One of the ways you can do that now that we are still in community quarantine is by sharing your resources. If you feel that nudge in your heart to support our church and our ministries, please visit give.questcebu.com for all our giving options. That's give.questcebu.com. Thank you so much in advance for your generosity. You are a hero. Speaking of heroes, we are currently at week 3 of a great sermon series about heroes. Over the past weeks, we've been learning about what heroes do and what we should do when others are in need, and they are not easy stuff. I think that's probably why so many of us reserve the hero title for someone else, someone other than us. But what if we have been invited to be heroes? What if it's up to us to accept the invitation? Let's listen to part 3 of Heroes by Randy Sia.
Presenting the thrilling adventures of an incredible personality. A being no larger than an ordinary man, but possessed of powers never before realized on Earth. Faster than an airplane, more powerful than a locomotive.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our Sunday service, and I hope everyone is doing well despite the fact that we're all in a bad situation right now. We're just let's continue praying for this pandemic, okay? But today will be our third is the third part of our series, Heroes. Now, when you think about heroes, you know, we always think about the Avengers or Superman and all that. And especially Superman, right? Superman is probably the very first hero where people actually looked up to as a super, like they're a fan of Superman. Okay, now, but Superman has this weakness, right? Basically, when there's this one thing that makes him powerless, which is, everyone knows it, Kryptonite. And now, the past 2 Sundays, we've been talking about heroes, and on week 1, we talked about how a hero sees what everyone else sees, but a hero is not satisfied or is not content to do what everyone else does, right? They tend to do something more than just what everyone else does. And also on week 2, we learned that a hero saves the day. Andy Stanley talked about the Good Samaritan and how Jesus made hero status accessible and possible for us all. Now, so if you think about this, if a hero sees what everyone else sees but takes action and saves the day, then you would have to think, what stops you and me in doing that? Right? What is stopping you and me to being the hero we're called to be? And what is that kryptonite that actually cripples us and that's keeping us powerless? Now, we're going to talk about this today because whether we like it or not, we all have kryptonites, right? And it made us powerless during our growing up years, and sometimes it still comes up from time to time, even in our adulthood. Now, fear, right? When you think about fear, it's usually it's usually triggered by something, right? So like a bad experience would lead to anxiety, and from that anxiety comes fear, right? So anxiety leads to fear. So a bad experience, something like that, something when you're a child, something hurt you, or you're in high school, something hurt you, somebody said something, or somebody criticized you for something, and you got hurt, and that kind of leads to anxiety, and from that it leads to fear, and so it kind of stops you from from moving forward sometimes in life, right? It's very crippling, and it's an emotion. It's not something physical, which, usually when it's physical, you can kind of correct it immediately. But when it's a feeling that you're feeling, this crippling emotion called fear really stops us from doing a lot of things, right? Now, I'm sure that we all agree that fear is the kryptonite that keeps us from being the heroes we were called to be, right? Now, we're not called to be heroes as Christians, right? It's not that we need it or that it's required of us. But do you remember when you were younger? When we were all younger, we would look up to someone, that's really cool, or someone who has helped someone who plays the basketball well. We admired those people, and we say we want to be just like those guys. I wanna be that person. I want to be like that when I grow up. So we tend to look up to someone who is extraordinary, right? Someone who has more than just the average person. So basically, all of us don't want to be just normal, like an average person. We want to be more, right? So something in us, there's just something in us that doesn't want to be just an average guy or girl, right? We don't want to be ordinary. We wish to be more. And you know what? The world really needs people that can do something more, right? And we don't need to look so far to actually know what our fears are, right? And it could be fear of heights. It could be fear of public speaking. It could be fear of meeting new people, or the fear of losing our jobs, or the fear of falling in love, right? All these things are these are common fears, right? Fear is very personal, right? It really hits a person, though we hide it a lot, right? We pretend that we're not fearful of anything, right? We hide it. Now, one example is, I remember when I was a kid, I'm from Mindanao basically, and when I was 7 years old, we moved to Cebu, and everything was new to me. I remember that I was so anxious, right? And the language was different, or the dialect was different. The culture, the people, everything was different, right? So I had this anxiety in me, and I remember being so fearful to go to school, right? It kind of became a thing where I didn't want to go to school because I was so fearful. I was not part of the crowd. Okay, so that's one kind of fear. When you move to another place, you're not sure what's going to happen in the future, what friends you're going to have, and you're going to miss your old friends and stuff like that. Now, another example would be a relationship. When someone is so sure about, oh, he's the person, he's the one that I'm going to marry. And then all of a sudden, during the course of relationship, they break up. And all of a sudden, anxiety sets in, and that eventually leads to fear. The fear of getting into a new relationship would be a real consequence for that, right? So today we're going to look at Matthew. If you remember, most of us know the story, of course, where Jesus was feeding 5,000 people with just from 5 loaves of bread and just a couple of fish, right? And after that miracle, Jesus told his disciples to go across the Sea of Galilee, to go to the other side, and that he was going to meet them there. And so he led them to the boat. He got them on the boat, and then he pushes the boat away and then let them go. And that was it, right? And reading on in Matthew 14:24, it says there the boat was already a considerable distance from land. Now, the Sea of Galilee is usually calm, but the land next to it has plateaus that causes these storms, okay? Now, so they're in the middle of the sea now, and there's a storm, so they're struggling through, right? And now, these people, these disciples, most of them are fishermen. And this is nothing new to them. There's a storm, I'm sure they've gone through storms before too. But regardless of that, they're stuck right in the middle of that sea, of the Sea of Galilee. So they were sure about where they were going, right? And they were sure about who sent them. But now they're stuck in the middle, wondering what's next. Fear starts to set in. I'm sure they were starting to be afraid, right? And I believe this is where their story and our story meet. Now, our fears are rooted in our inability to predict our future, okay? Our fears are rooted in our inability. That means we're not able to, when we are not able to know our future for sure, the next thing we feel is fear, right? We don't know where we're going next. We don't know what the future holds. We don't have a job now, and there's just this future thing that we don't know what's going to happen, and that really makes us fearful. So going back to the story, they're now in the middle of the lake or the Sea of Galilee. Now, let's see what happens next. Matthew 14:25, it says, "Shortly before dawn, Jesus went out to them walking on the lake." It's always darkest before dawn, right? Think about that. You're in the middle of nowhere. It's really dark. And basically Jesus went out to them walking on the lake during that very moment. Now, the question, why did Jesus even choose to do this, right? Why not just, let the storm not happen at all, right? Or if, he's on the other side of the lake, he could have just told them, "Oh, there's a storm. You guys will be okay. Don't worry. I'm going to stop the storm," right? He didn't do that, right? Now, I think Jesus at that point, or Jesus during that time, I think he wants to make a point. He was illustrating something to them by walking on the water towards them, towards his disciples. Okay, let's go on reading. Matthew 14:26. When the disciples saw him walking on the lake, they were terrified. "It's a ghost," they said, and cried out in fear. Now, they cried out in fear, right? They were terrified. Okay, so that means there was something threatening right in front of them, right? So, and these are grown men, and they were crying in fear, right? So it's kind of funny thinking that, but this is real, right? If you were with a bunch of friends in the middle of the sea and it's really dark, and all of a sudden you see someone walking on water, you'd be scared too, right? So from moments of being stuck to the point they see a ghost walking on water coming towards them, that's not a very normal experience for any fisherman, right? They're not only stuck there, but now there's a threat right in front of them. So let's go back to the statement that we said earlier. So while our fears are rooted in our inability to predict our future, okay, so when our future goes from cloudy to compromise, we find our fears are accelerated by our inability to protect the future. Okay? So, you know, again, rooted in our inability, fear is rooted in our inability to predict our future, right? When we can't predict the future, we fear. But when that becomes compromised, something happens to it, you know, something else happens and even makes the situation worse, then we realize that we can't even protect our future, right? So our fear is accelerated, samot na takadlok, right? So let's go on reading. Matthew 14:37. But Jesus immediately said to them, "Take courage, it is I, don't be afraid." Now, notice something here. He didn't say, "Don't worry guys, it's just me," you know. You know, it's not like that. He actually says, his first words were, "Take courage." Right? It's like saying, "Take courage from me, guys, it's me. You know me. We've traveled together. You've seen miracles. I mean, we just fed 5,000 people, right? Trust me. You don't need to be afraid." In fact, 6 chapters back, they've been in this situation. They were in a storm on a boat, but Jesus was with them at that time, and Jesus calmed the storm. Have they forgotten that? Right? Well, the difference is Jesus was not with them on that boat, right? So it's like, so now at this very moment, it's like watching a movie, a superhero movie, and somebody comes up and takes action and say, "Hey, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna save the day for all of us," and stuff like that. So if we go on reading Matthew 14:28 through 29, Peter comes up and say, "Lord, if it's you," Peter replied, "tell me to come to you on the water." Now, take note, okay? The water is raging, right? The waves are high, the winds are blowing, okay? And then Peter says, "Tell me to come to you on the water, God," or Jesus. Peter decided basically to take Jesus up on the offer, right? He's taking courage because Jesus said, "Take courage." So he says, "Okay, I'm going to take up your offer. I'm going to take this courage that you're offering me." He's trusting, Peter is trusting that it is him, Jesus. He chose Jesus to quiet down his fears, right? And you know how Jesus answered Peter when Peter said, "Tell me to come to you on the water." And Jesus just gave him one answer, "Come." Matthew 14:29. Then Peter got down out of the boat, walked on the water, and came toward Jesus. Imagine, I just got goosebumps. Imagine being Peter, right? The waves, the winds, and there's the edge of the boat. You're telling Jesus, "Lord, if that's you, okay, then I'll come out to you. Just say the word." Jesus says, "Come." So you're at the edge, on the edge of that boat, getting your foot out and stepping on water, and another foot out, and you start walking on water. You're on the decision to be made. There's a decision to be made at the very moment Peter came up and said something to God, to Jesus. A decision that we're going to continually make, right? Would he allow the fear of stepping out lead to missing out? Right? Basically, should we allow fear, the fear of doing something, the fear of stepping out of our comfort zone, lead to missing something out? Right? So if we don't do it, you know, we're scared to do something, and so we don't do it, And so we miss out something that could be a lot better than the situation that you're in, right? It's faith. It's that moment where you have to decide, okay, should I do this? Jesus is right there saying, come. Should I step out of my comfort zone and actually say, okay, I'll do it, because I don't want to miss out what good stuff is on the other side of my fear, right? So again, Peter was pouring out his trust. If it is you, tell me to come to you on the water. Basically, Peter is just saying, I know that if you call me, it's going to be extraordinary. I'm going to experience no one else has ever experienced. And I don't even know what the 11 disciples were doing at that very moment, right? They must be awed by just watching this whole thing happening. So basically Peter is just saying, so if you call me, Lord, I'll come. The water is still raging, stepped out of the boat, and he was walking on water. And imagine what happened next, right? You're walking on water and all of a sudden you get distracted. In Matthew 14:30 it says, but when he saw the wind, he was afraid. He took his eyes off from whom he trusted, and he became afraid. He saw the wind and became afraid. And he began to sink. Have you ever experienced this in life, right? You're in the middle of a storm, trials, hardships in life, then you begin to sink. Everything that you thought that was going to happen has changed. And here's where we find Peter, right? Peter has options in that very moment. He could have said, okay, I'll hold my breath. I know how to swim, right? Or he could have just turned to his friends and said, hey, throw me a vest, right? But what he chose to do was just awesome. He again called out to Jesus. The very same kind of faith, the very same kind of trust that he did when he stepped out of the boat. He realized that he needs to turn his eyes back to Jesus and say, Lord, save me. Right? He took his eyes off the wind and back on the object of his trust and said, Lord, save me. I know it's you. I trust you. I will not be afraid. Save me. That's basically what he was saying. Matthew 14:31, what did Jesus do? Immediately, Jesus reached out his hand and caught him, Peter. Not then Jesus walked to Peter or it didn't take a lot of time. It says immediately, instantly, right away, Jesus reached out. In this wind, right? The wind, the waves, the storm happening around you, you're sinking. And Jesus comes and picks you up because you call out to him. Now, I'm sure when Jesus picked Peter up out of the water, they were probably face to face, right? Jesus is probably looking at Peter's eyes. And in Matthew 14:31, he says, "You of little faith," he said, "why did you doubt?" I don't think Jesus was scolding Peter, right? Or making him feel guilty. I think he was just reminding Peter, hey, you're going to be okay, right? Why did you doubt, right? The other 11 have not experienced what you're experiencing right now. You've got what it takes. You did it. So, things to think about. What made Peter different from the other disciples? Why was he the only one who reacted? What motivated him? Could it be that he just didn't want to be an average fisherman, right? Now, if we were to interview Peter about that day and ask him, hey, Peter, what happened that day? Tell me your story. He would probably say, well, there was a storm and we were just really scared. It was really dark and the winds were blowing, so we naturally were very scared. And you would say, if you were afraid, why did you get out of the boat? And Peter would probably say, well, I got out of the boat because Jesus said, take courage. I mean, he offered me courage. And Jesus assured me that it was him. You know, I traveled with him for 3 years. And, you know, I saw him feed the 5,000 people there. And there were so many other miracles that I've witnessed. And he said, it is I. And I said, you know what? I know you. I know the power that you have. And I know what you can do. And what you offer is extraordinary. So I trusted him. So Peter would probably say to us, take courage and trust Jesus. You know, you should do that too, right? So if we're on the edge of a hard decision, you know, like maybe on the edge of saving your job, on the edge of losing your job, on the edge of solving your financial situation, or on the edge of repairing a relationship, whatever it is, don't let your fear of stepping out lead to missing out. You know, we have to remember that. Okay? What's on the other side of this fear that we have is something extraordinary. I know it's easier said than done, right? But when we don't take courage to step out, we would miss experiencing something extraordinary. We would miss something that could, you know, unimaginably greater than where we're at. But I know that in this process, many things can happen when we step out. You know, things can happen wherein, you know, before you get to the other side, you know, just like when Peter stepped out, he began to sink. Sometimes when we do that, when we step out, we find ourselves sinking instead, and we become so distracted and we start to get discouraged. I'm sure we could relate to that, right? That happens in life. But we can learn a lot from Peter. In the moment where he was sinking, right? He redirected his eyes back on the one he trusted. As Christ followers, who we trust is greater than what we fear. So when I'm tempted to fear, I should have the ability to take my eyes off the wind, the things that I fear, that I'm scared of, the things that bug me, the things that you know, distracts me. I have to take my eyes off the wind and put them back, or turn them back to whom I trust, Jesus. I can do that, I think. I think I can take courage. I can trust that. Now, I don't operate life without fear. I'm sure we don't operate life without fear, right? Fear is always going to be there. It's how we handle it. But we should take courage from Jesus by trusting him. And trusting in Jesus will allow you to operate life with your fears quieted. Wouldn't that be nice? So every time we're fearful, you know, we know that we have this certain courage that we get from Jesus. And that would help us quiet down our fears. So taking courage, trusting Jesus, and not letting my fear of stepping out lead to missing out. We gotta step out, okay? Because we have this courage that Jesus has given to us. So I hope we learned something from today's message. I'm for sure that have learned something from this, because this is not very easy, right? This is not easy at all. Things happen in life, and then sometimes you just kind of like do your own thing, and so you end up not stepping out, so you miss out chances of great things happening. So when I think about this story, I want to be like Peter. I want to be like, he's basically the superhero here, right? I want to be like him. He steps out of the boat because Jesus told him to. But, it was not Jesus who did it first, right? It was Peter who said, Lord, if that's really you, then tell me to step out. Tell me to come to you. Now, in life, we go through hardships and trials. We can say that. God, if you're there, right? I know you were there. Please help me. We can say that. And sometimes God led us through things, right? We might still fall after that. We might still sink after, but we need to redirect our eyes back to Him whom we trust. So it's just a matter of, we just keep on focusing on Him, no matter what we go through in life. So, thank you again for being with us today. And let me go ahead and pray for us. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you, Lord, for being with us. We thank you that we have someone that we can trust, Lord, and that is you. Lord, you know what we're all going through right now, what the world is going through right now, Lord. And I'm sure, Lord, most and all of your followers are praying for this situation, for this pandemic to end. Lord, help us to trust you more. Help us to say, hey, you got this. And I just need to really trust you. Lord, we thank you that we're still able to meet like this. We're still able to learn about you through this online technology. And even though we can't meet in person, we thank you for this opportunity, for this privilege, Lord, that we have. And so, Lord, I just really commit all the things that are happening in this world into your hands. And Lord, help us to trust you more. Help us to take courage, Lord. Help us to know you more. So, Lord, we just ask all these things in your holy name. Amen.
Bring it all to peace. The storm surrounding me, let it break. At your name, still call the sea to still, the rage in me to still every wave. At your name, Jesus, Jesus, you make the darkness tremble. Jesus, Jesus, you silenced fear. Jesus, Jesus, you make the darkness tremble. Jesus, Jesus, breathe, call these bones to live, call these lungs to sing once again. I will praise Jesus, Jesus, you make the darkness tremble. Jesus, Jesus, you silence fear. Jesus, Jesus, you make the darkness tremble. Jesus, 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 you make the darkness tremble. Jesus, Jesus, you silence fear. Jesus, Jesus. tremble. Jesus, Jesus. Your name is alive that the shadows can't deny. Your name cannot be overcome. Your name is alive, forever lifted high. Your name cannot be overcome. Jesus, Jesus, you make the darkness tremble. Jesus, Jesus, you silence fear. Jesus, Jesus, you make the darkness tremble. Jesus, 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 you make the darkness tremble. Jesus, Jesus, you silence fear. Jesus, Jesus, you make the darkness tremble. Jesus, Jesus, your name is a light that the shadows can't deny. Your name cannot be overcome. Your name is alive, forever lifted high. Your name cannot be overcome. Your name is alive that the shadows can't deny. Your name cannot be overcome. Your name is alive, forever lifted high. Your name cannot be overcome. Jesus, 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 Jesus.
No one is disqualified from being a hero. In spite of his past, Matthew became one when he accepted Jesus' invitation to follow him. Jesus invites us to follow him too, despite what may be in our past. When we move beyond our past and accept Jesus' invitation to follow him, we can become heroes too. May you have a blessed Sunday ahead. Take care, everyone, and see you next week. God bless.